Welcome. Our mission today, well, it's a deep dive into something pretty universal, I think. That constant chatter in your head, the doubt, the fear, stuff that just holds us back. If you've ever felt like, the biggest battle you fight is right between your own ears, then yeah, you'll get what we're talking about. We're digging into the key ideas from reviews and summaries of Craig Groeschel's book, Winning the War in Your Mind. And it offers this really interesting roadmap, blends biblical wisdom with, believe it or not, modern neuroscience and psychology.
Exactly. Our goal here is to pull out the practical strategy,
Yeah.
something that helped you, reshape that internal landscape and maybe do it quicker than you'd think. The book's main idea, it's simple, but wow, profound. Right there in the subtitle, change your thinking, change your life.
Yeah.
But what's really key, I think, is the distinction he makes.
Which is?
Well, that the whole journey of faith, it's meant to be about life transformation, real deep change, not just tinkering with your behavior on the surface, like behavior modification. If you actually change the underlying thoughts, the thinking patterns, well, the behavior naturally follows. That's the idea.
That distinction really hits home. It puts all the focus squarely on the mind, doesn't it? Now, here's something that kind of surprised me, but it gives this whole thing real weight. Craig Groeschel, I mean, he's the founding pastor of Life,
Yeah, sure.
very charismatic speaker, created the YouVersion Bible app that millions use, seems super confident.
Absolutely. You see this figure of massive success, spiritual leadership, and yet in the book, he's just completely open, talks about his own long struggles with insecurity, anxiety, that constant negative self-talk. And it's that vulnerability, I think, that makes the whole framework he presents so compelling.
Yeah, and what really struck me was how openly he talks about getting professional help,
Right.
therapy, tackling that stigma head on, which you sometimes find, well, anywhere really.
Oh, definitely. He doesn't shy away from it at all. Notes that, wisdom means getting help when you need it. He actually writes something like, yes, I am pastor, and yes, I am in counseling. I believe it is biblical and wise to get help from the wise. And he adds, sometimes we need to talk through our stuff with someone trained in talking through stuff. Someone who has no agenda except to help us get well. That kind of honesty, it just grounds everything, makes it feel, real and applicable.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. He sets up the mind as the ultimate battlefield. Like, this is where success or failure really begins. Before we can fix anything, we need to know what we're up against, which the book calls lies we believe.
Yeah, that's the foundation. The core problem is buying into these persistent, destructive internal scripts. The source material calls them lies that have become strongholds. Things like, I'm just not good enough, or maybe things will never get better for me, or my past defines who I am.
Right, those kinds of thoughts.
And the key insight is this, a lie that you believe as if it's true. Well, it will absolutely impact your life as if it were true. You live out of that false reality.
Okay, so if the lie is acting like truth in my life, the first thing I have to do is stop it. Stop letting it in. That sounds like the first principle.
It is. That leads us right to the replacement principle. Remove the lies, replace with truth. Groeschel really emphasizes you can't change what you don't confront. You have to face it. So the first act of freedom is identifying that lie that's kind of running the show in your head and then consciously deciding, nope, that's false.
So the directive is basically stop letting these toxic thoughts just run rampant. We need to take control of that inner voice.
Precisely. And he points to a biblical strategy for this from 2 Corinthians 10.5. It talks about taking captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. Taking captive, that's active, right? It's confrontational. It means you notice the negative thought, you recognize, okay, that's a lie. You reject its authority, and then you immediately intentionally replace it. State a truth, maybe a specific promise that counters it. That confrontation, that replacement, that's how you start breaking the stronghold's power.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Once we spot the lie, like say, I'm a failure, the problem is we've probably thought that thousands of times. It feels automatic. So how do we actually break that pattern if the thought just seems to pop up on its own? That sounds almost physical, not just spiritual.
It's both. And that's the really cool synthesis in the book. It brings us to the next step, the rewire principle. Rewire your brain. Renew your mind. See, when you repeat a thought, doesn't matter if it's negative self-talk or a life-giving truth, your brain physically builds a structure for it. Our minds are like command centers, always creating these neural pathways. Groeschel uses this great analogy of ruts.
Ruts. So you mean those persistent negative thoughts, they aren't just annoying ideas, they're actually carving like physical highways in our brain.
That's exactly right. Your brain loves efficiency. It looks for patterns and creates shortcuts, those neurological ruts you mentioned. So if the repeated pattern is believing a lie, maybe something like, I always let people down, well, that rut becomes the default. It gets automatic, destructive, and guides your behavior without you even consciously thinking about it. We're kind of designed to fall into habits,
Yeah.
and toxic thinking is really just a bad habit that we physically cemented into our brain structure.
Wow. Okay, that sounds honestly a bit discouraging. Like we're wired for failure if those ruts are deep. What's the mechanism then? How does the book say we can overcome this physical structure?
Well, here's the amazing part, the good news. It's called neuroplasticity. Your brain isn't stuck. It actually has this incredible ability to adapt, reorganize, and literally create new neural pathways, pathways that can override the old destructive ones. Think of it like remodeling a house. You wouldn't just live with faulty wiring,
Yeah,
right?
and you rip it out.
Exactly. You tear out the old useless wires and you install new, reliable ones. That's the potential we have for renewal in our minds.
Okay, I like that. So how do we start installing the new wiring? How do we build what the book calls these trenches of truth that are actually stronger than the old ruts?
It takes deliberate, conscious effort. And the key, again, is repetition. It's about intentionally creating new habits of thought. The book highlights two main tools for forcing the creation of these new pathways. First one is meditation, but it's defined here as Christian meditation, which isn't about emptying the mind. It's about filling it, deliberately focusing on memorizing, turning over specific truths, often Bible verses that directly counter the lies you identified earlier.
Okay, filling the mind, not emptying. Got it. And the second tool, it involves actually speaking it out.
Correct. The second is declaration or affirmations. This is where you repeat statements of truth out loud. You write them down. You read them daily. It's this combination, the physical repetition of saying and writing, plus the mental focus that physically prompts the brain to build the new trench. Groeschel puts it perfectly. Repetition is what created the old rut. Repetition is what will create the new trench. You're literally physically training your brain to default to a new, healthier thought pattern. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, once you start winning that inner battle, through replacement and this rewiring, the next hurdle is often dealing with the outside world. Often the challenge isn't just the tough circumstances themselves, but how we see them, how we perceive them when they hit. And that brings us to the third part of the strategy.
Right, the reframe principle. Reframe your mind, restore your perspective. It sounds like choosing the lens we look through, especially when things are out of our control.
Spot on. Groeschel points out that, well, a sign of maturity is realizing that so much of life, maybe a financial issue, an unexpected illness, relationship problems, it's just out of our hands. We can't control the event itself, but, and this is crucial, we can control our perception of the event, our reaction to it. And psychologists actually have a term for this. Cognitive reframing. Okay, cognitive reframing. But for the Christian, this reframing, it has a specific focus, right? A particular anchor. It does, yeah. And it's essential. It means consciously choosing the goodness of God as your default cognitive bias. So when life throws a curveball, instead of automatically thinking, oh, this is punishment or God's forgotten me, this reframing lens pushes you to actively look for evidence of mercy or grace, or maybe even a hidden purpose in it. It's viewing that setback through the lens of faith, knowing, as the book puts it, there's not a moment when we have been forsaken or forgotten.
Mhm.
Really, the only control we truly have is the perspective we choose to adopt, no matter how difficult the situation looks from the outside.
That's a really powerful internal shift. Okay, let's talk practicals. How do we maintain that shift day to day? The final part of the strategy seems to focus on turning that perspective into like a sustainable action.
That's the rejoice principle. Revive your soul, reclaim your life. And the focus here is really on the consistent practice of two things, prayer and praise. And this isn't just, wishful thinking or some fluffy spiritual exercise. The sources we looked at actually highlight that science shows prayer is like a literal workout for your brain. It can actually change brain chemistry.
Wow, really?
Yeah, reinforcing those new positive pathways we talked about. There's that instruction in Romans 12:2. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's an active process.
So the very act of praying is physically helping the rewiring process.
Absolutely. Groeschel draws this stark contrast. Worrying, letting toxic thoughts spin. That changes your brain too, but it moves your life in a negative direction. Conscious, intentional prayer, on the other hand, also changes your brain chemistry, but it moves your life in a positive direction. It creates this powerful, positive feedback loop that physically helps the transformation stick.
Okay, that makes sense. And where does praise fit into solidifying that loop?
Praise forces an immediate shift in perspective. It kind of compels us to acknowledge God's goodness, right? It shifts the focus away from everything that's wrong in the situation towards what's still right, what remains constant and true. It's an active choice for gratitude, for seeing abundance instead of lack. Groeschel observes a change of perspective leads us to praise God, and praising God changes our perspective. It works both ways. So that combination, prayer and praise, provides the sort of daily maintenance needed to keep those new trenches of truth strong against, the inevitable pushback from the old lies.
Yeah, it's definitely clear this isn't passive. It's like a whole active system built on being consistent. And it's probably good to remind ourselves, and you listening, that winning this war isn't usually like a single dramatic victory. It's more about those daily, small, consistent steps,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's a habit you build over time.
Hmm.
And the book actually provides tools for this. The reviews mention things like practical exercises at the end of each chapter to help you pinpoint those lies.
Yeah.
And there's even a whole appendix listing specific Bible verses for winning the war, which makes that truth replacement step really concrete and actionable.
Okay, so summing this up, what does it all mean? We've walked through this really powerful four-part strategy. Replace the lies, rewire the brain, reframe your perspective, and then rejoice through intentional practice. It's all designed to help you move past that toxic thinking and actually achieve genuine life transformation. And the simple, maybe life-changing truth holding it all together is this. Your mind is a battlefield, yeah, but it's one that is absolutely winnable.
And that win, that transformation, it really hinges on being intentional and maybe acting quickly when those thoughts arise. We should probably leave you with the most actionable quote we found, which kind of perfectly captures that first step, the replacement principle. Capture your thoughts before they capture you.
Capture your thoughts before they capture you.
Capture the thoughts before they capture you. I like that. Okay, so since repetition seems to be the engine here, building both those bad ruts and the helpful trenches, here's a final thought for you to maybe chew on. Over the next, say, 24 hours, just try to notice your single most repetitive negative thought, that go-to bit of self-talk. Maybe it's, I'm just so overwhelmed, or I always mess this up, or I should have known better. Once you identify that specific, frequent lie, just ask yourself, what's one simple counteracting truth you could intentionally repeat, maybe just 10 times, tomorrow? Just to start that physical process, that first step of digging a new, more resilient trench, that intentional repetition. Well, that's exactly where the rewiring begins.